The morning light streamed through the windows of turning pages, casting warm shadows across rows of carefully arranged books. Lily Wright hummed softly as she unboxed a new shipment, the scent of fresh paper and binding glue filling the air. At 42, with her dark hair often pulled back in a simple bun and glasses that frequently slid down her nose, Lily was a fixture in the small town of Millfield. "Morning, Lily. Got that gardening book I ordered?" Mr. Parker called out as he pushed open the door, the little bell above jingling cheerfully. Lily smiled, reaching beneath the counter to pull out a wrapped package. "Just came in yesterday. I set it aside for you." Her voice was warm but quiet, the kind that made people naturally lean in to listen. "You're a lifesaver," Mr. Parker said, fishing out his wallet. "The wife's birthday is tomorrow and she's been dropping hints about this book for weeks. She'll love it," Lily assured him, carefully placing the book in one of her recycled paper bags with the bookstore's simple logo stamped on the side. "The section on perennials is especially good." As Mr. Parker left, Lily returned to her unpacking, methodically checking each book against her invoice. What the friendly customer didn't know, what nobody in Millfield knew, was that Lily had once been attorney Lillian Wright, graduated first in her class from Harvard Law, former senior partner at Caldwell and Brennan in New York City, with a reputation for never losing a case. 5 years ago, she had walked away from all of it. The six-figure salary, the corner office with a view of Central Park, the respect of judges who would straighten up when she entered their courtrooms. The panic attacks that came with it all. Lily shelved a romance novel, smoothing her hand over its spine. Sometimes she missed the intellectual challenge of law, the thrill of finding the perfect precedent, the satisfaction of helping clients navigate impossible situations. But she didn't miss the person she had become, someone who couldn't sleep, who forgot to eat, who had no time for novels or friends or quiet mornings. "Hey there, bookworm." A cheerful voice broke through her thoughts as Donna Wilson, the owner of the bakery next door, bustled in with a paper bag that smelled of cinnamon. "Brought you a muffin. You always forget to eat breakfast." Lily accepted the bag with genuine gratitude. "You're too good to me." "Nonsense. I'm just fattening you up so you'll have enough energy to find me another mystery book like that last one. My husband got annoyed because I stayed up until 2 in the morning finishing it." Donna leaned against the counter, her round face bright with curiosity. "So what's new? Anything exciting happen in the thrilling world of books?" "Just the usual," Lily replied, taking a bite of the still warm muffin. "Though I did get that shipment of local history books. For the library's special collection." "What?" She didn't mention was how she'd stayed up late last night reading about a Supreme Court case that had caught her attention in the newspaper. Old habits died hard, and she still subscribed to legal journals under the guise of providing resources for the community. Donna chatted for a few more minutes before heading back to her bakery, leaving behind the scent of cinnamon and friendship. Lily treasured these simple interactions, so different from the high-stakes negotiations of her previous life. The day unfolded like most others, helping a teenager find research materials for a school project, recommending a cookbook to a nervous newlywed, ordering a rare book for the town's history teacher. Around noon, the mayor's wife came in looking harried. "Lily, thank goodness you're here," she said, dropping her oversized purse on the counter with a thud. "The Historical Society is having a problem with our tax-exempt status paperwork, and nobody can make heads or tails of it. The town council meeting is tonight and we need to have an answer." Lily felt the familiar tug, the desire to say, "Let me see the paperwork. I can fix this." Instead, she said, "That sounds complicated. Have you talked to Pete at the accounting office?" The mayor's wife sighed. "He's out sick and honestly he wasn't much help anyway. He kept saying something about subsection regulations, but it was all Greek to me." Lily hesitated, then nodded toward the back room. "I have some reference books that might help. Let me take a look at what you've got." 20 minutes later, Lily had identified the problem, a simple misinterpretation of a clause that required nonprofits to file certain additional forms if they owned property. She carefully explained it to the mayor's wife in plain language, showing her exactly where to find the information in the IRS publication, never once revealing that she had authored a 30-page legal brief on this very topic in her previous life. "How do you know all this?" the mayor's wife asked, astonished. "From running your bookstore?" Lily smiled. "I read a lot. And I've had my own struggles with paperwork for the store. She handed back the forms. Just attach this supplemental sheet and you should be fine. After the woman left, bubbling with thanks, Lily sat quietly at her desk, feeling the familiar mix of satisfaction and caution. She loved using her knowledge to help people, but she was always careful not to reveal too much. She had come to Millfield to escape, to heal, to find a simpler way of living. The last thing she wanted was to become the town's unofficial legal consultant. The afternoon brought a steady stream of customers, including several kids who came in after school to browse the young adult section. Lily always kept a jar of cookies on the counter for them, earning her a reputation as the cool bookstore lady among the local teenagers. As closing time approached, Lily noticed a stranger peering through the window of her shop. A man in an expensive suit looking decidedly out of place in casual Millfield. Her heart rate quickened slightly, a reflex from her old life when unexpected visitors often meant trouble. The bell jingled as he entered, glancing around with an appraising eye. "Can I help you?" Lily asked, keeping her voice neutral. "Just browsing," he replied, but his attention seemed more focused on the store itself than on any books. "Nice little place you've got here." There was something about his tone, condescending, evaluating, that set her on edge. She'd heard that tone before, from opposing counsel who underestimated her because she was a woman, from judges who thought they could intimidate her. "We're closing in 10 minutes, she said pleasantly, "but you're welcome to look around until then." The man nodded, picking up a book about local history and flipping through it carelessly. "I'm moving to the area," he offered without being asked. "Going to be the new judge at the county court?" "Name's Hammond, Judge Richard Hammond." Lily froze for just a moment, then continued straightening a display. "Welcome to Millfield. It's a lovely community." "Seems quiet," he said, putting the book down slightly out of place. "I'm coming from Chicago. Big change." "I'm sure it is," Lily replied, resisting the urge to check if she had any cases that might have crossed his path during her career. "What brings you to our small town?" "Change of pace. Plus, they needed someone to clean up the local court system. Too much leniency from what I hear." He looked directly at her now. "I believe in following the letter of the law. No exceptions." Something cold settled in Lily's stomach. She'd known judges like this before, rigid, unyielding, more interested in power than justice. "The law can be complicated," she said carefully. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Not if you know what you're doing." He checked his watch. "Well, I should let you close up. See you around, Miss Wright." "Lily Wright, Ms. Wright." He nodded and turned to leave, then paused at the door. "Oh, by the way, there's going to be a review of business licenses and tax compliance for all the shops on Main Street. Just routine. Nothing to worry about if everything's in order." After he left, Lily stood motionless for a long moment. The warning in his words had been clear. She thought about her store records. Meticulously kept, of course, but she'd deliberately kept a low profile with her business, minimizing income in exchange for a peaceful life. There was nothing illegal about it, but she knew how numbers could be twisted to tell different stories. Lily locked the door and flipped the sign to closed, then went to the small office in the back. From the bottom drawer of her filing cabinet, she pulled out a leather-bound notebook, her old legal journal. She hadn't written in it since coming to Millfield, but something told her she might need to dust off some of her old skills. As she ran her fingers over the embossed initials on the cover, a complex mix of emotions washed over her: fear, determination, and underneath it all, a tiny spark of the old fire, the intellectual challenge she'd once lived for. "Well, Judge Hammond," she murmured to the empty room, "I hope you're better at your job than you think I am at mine." 2 weeks after Judge Hammond's visit to the bookstore, Lily was arranging a new window display featuring local authors when she noticed a town police car pulling up outside. Officer Tom Grayson, who usually came in on Fridays to pick up mystery novels for his wife, stepped out. But this wasn't Friday, and the stiff way he held his shoulders told Lily this wasn't a social call. The bell above the door jingled as he entered, his normally friendly face pinched with discomfort. "Morning, Tom," Lily said, setting down the book in her hands. "Everything okay?" He removed his hat, clutching it awkwardly. "Not exactly, Lily. I've got some paperwork for you." He pulled an official-looking envelope from inside his jacket. "I'm sorry about this." Lily wiped dust from her hands and took the envelope. Inside was a court summons, commanding her appearance before the county court regarding alleged tax irregularities and business code violations. Judge Richard Hammond's signature slashed across the bottom. Her stomach tightened, but years of courtroom experience kept her face neutral. "I see, thank you, Tom." "This doesn't make sense," he said, lowering his voice even though they were alone in the store. "Everyone knows you run the most honest business in town. Judge Hammond just got here, and he's already causing trouble." Lily carefully refolded the paper. "I'm sure there's just been a misunderstanding." "Well, the whole thing stinks if you ask me. First day on the job and he's already going after small businesses." Tom shook his head. "He's ordered audits of half the shops on Main Street. But word is he's particularly interested in your place." After Tom left, promising to tell his wife to bring over some of her famous lasagna later, Lily flipped the open sign to closed and carried the summons to her back office. The document listed multiple allegations: inconsistent income reporting, improper expense claims, and failure to maintain required business records. The penalties, if proven, included hefty fines and even the possibility of jail time. For most small business owners, this would be terrifying. For Lily, it was infuriating. Her records were immaculate, deliberately so. She'd used her legal knowledge to ensure everything about turning pages was above board, if intentionally modest. She pulled out her business files and spread them across her desk. The audit would find nothing illegal, but she recognized the tactic. Hammond wasn't interested in actual violations. He was fishing for something, anything, to establish his authority in the town. She'd seen judges like him before, men who used their position to intimidate rather than to seek justice. The phone rang, startling her from her thoughts. "Lily? It's Donna. Tom just told me what happened. Are you okay?" The baker's voice was tight with concern. "I'm fine," Lily assured her. "It's just a misunderstanding." "Misunderstanding, my foot. First that man comes to town acting like he owns the place, and now he's targeting you. This is outrageous." By evening, Lily's phone hadn't stopped ringing. News traveled fast in Millfield. The mayor called to express his regrets and assure her the town council stood behind her. The high school principal, whose students often used the bookstore as an after-school study space, offered character references. Even old Mr. Jenkins, who came in every Sunday for the newspaper and never said more than 2 words, had his daughter call to say he was mighty upset about that new judge picking on the book lady. The support was touching, but as Lily warmed up leftover soup for dinner, a heavier feeling settled over her. She'd come to Millfield to escape the high-pressure world of law, to find peace in simple things. Now her haven was threatened, and worse, she faced a dilemma: defend herself with the full force of her legal knowledge and risk exposing her past, or play the role of the simple bookseller and possibly lose everything she'd built here. Sleep eluded her that night. At 3 a.m, she finally gave up, wrapped herself in a blanket, and sat by her apartment window overlooking the quiet Main Street. The courthouse loomed at the far end, its white columns ghostly in the moonlight. The next morning, dark circles under her eyes concealed by hastily applied makeup. Lily was shelving books when the bell jingled. She turned to see Patricia Dean, the town's only attorney, standing in the doorway. "I heard what happened," Patricia said without preamble. "I'm here to offer my services." "Pro bono, of course." Lily's throat tightened with unexpected emotion. "That's incredibly kind, but..." "No buts," Patricia interrupted. "Hammond is on some kind of power trip. Yesterday he held 3 shopkeepers in contempt for the most ridiculous reasons. Harold at the hardware store got fined because his store hours sign was misleadingly ambiguous." Patricia was in her 60s, with a legal practice consisting mostly of wills and real estate transactions. She was kind and dedicated, but Lily knew she would be outmatched against whatever Hammond was planning. "I've already reviewed the summons," Patricia continued, pulling out a notepad. "His allegations are vague, which makes me think he doesn't have anything concrete." "Classic intimidation tactic," Lily nodded, recognizing the assessment she'd made herself. "What do you suggest?" "We request all evidence, demand specifics on the allegations, and file for dismissal based on lack of substantive claims," Patricia said, her voice gaining confidence. "Basic legal strategy." Very basic, Lily thought, but didn't say. "That sounds reasonable. The hearing is scheduled for next week." Hammond fast-tracked it, another red flag. "He's trying to catch you unprepared." Patricia looked up from her notes. "We should meet daily to prepare." "My office or yours?" "Actually, Lily said slowly, making a decision. I think I'd like to look at the options myself first. I have a cousin who used to work in tax law. I might reach out for some advice. Patricia looked surprised, then slightly hurt. Of course. But remember, I'm here if you need me. After Patricia left, Lily locked the door and leaned against it, guilt washing over her. She hadn't lied. She did have a cousin in tax law, but she'd handled more complex tax fraud cases than her cousin ever had. By afternoon, the whispers around town had evolved into outright anger toward the new judge. When Lily stepped into the grocery store, conversations halted, replaced by sympathetic looks and encouraging pats on the shoulder. Don't you worry, Lily, said the grocery owner as he bagged her items. We've all signed a petition demanding the county review Hammond's appointment. Nobody messes with one of our own. The support was heartwarming but also concerning. Lily hadn't come to Millfield to cause divisions or be at the center of controversy. She'd come to disappear into quiet anonymity. As she walked home, she noticed a sleek black car parked outside the courthouse. Judge Hammond stood on the steps watching her. Even from a distance, she could feel the smugness in his posture. He raised a hand in what might have been a wave but felt more like a warning. That evening, Lily received another visitor, Mayor Wilson, Donna's husband, looking harried and uncomfortable in his after-work suit. This situation with Judge Hammond has gotten out of hand, he said, accepting a cup of tea. He's called me twice today suggesting the town should reevaluate its support of businesses with questionable practices. He's threatening the town because people support me? Lily asked, incredulous. The mayor nodded grimly. He mentioned that county funding for our road repairs could be complicated by official town opposition to his investigations. That's completely inappropriate, Lily said. Feeling the old fire rising in her chest, it gets worse. The mayor continued. He specifically mentioned your bookstore as being part of a larger problem. He's scheduled a public hearing about your case, claiming it's an exemplary instance of the lax standards that have been permitted in Millfield. The mayor looked embarrassed. Some of the council members are getting nervous. The road funding is critical for us this year. Lily understood the unspoken question. Would she back down to spare the town from Hammond's retribution? I need to think about this, she said carefully. After the mayor left, Lily sat alone in her apartment above the bookstore. Through her window, she could see lights still on in many houses. Her neighbors, her friends, probably discussing her situation right now. She walked to her closet and pushed aside the casual clothes she'd adopted as her Millfield uniform. In the back hung a garment bag she hadn't opened in 5 years. Slowly, she unzipped it to reveal 3 impeccably tailored suits, the armor she'd worn in her previous life. Her fingers traced the fine wool of the navy jacket. Memories flooding back, the weight of responsibility, the thrill of intellectual battle, the cost of constant vigilance. She'd left that life behind for good reasons. But now Hammond had brought the fight to her door, threatening not just her peaceful existence but the town she'd grown to love. Lily took a deep breath and removed the navy suit from its hanger. Sometimes, the only way forward was to face the past. Lily stood in front of the bathroom mirror, studying her reflection. The navy suit fit perfectly despite 5 years of dust gathering on its shoulders. Her hair, usually in a casual bun or ponytail, was now twisted into a sleek professional knot. With her reading glasses replaced by contacts, she barely recognized herself. She looked exactly like attorney Lillian Wright of Caldwell and Brennan, the woman she'd left behind. Shaking her head, Lily changed back into her comfortable jeans and sweater. The transformation wasn't necessary yet. She had work to do first. Downstairs, she'd closed the bookstore with a simple sign, closed for inventory. It wasn't entirely a lie. She was taking inventory of every legal resource she had available. The back office had been transformed. Books about small business law, tax codes, and county regulations lined the desk. Her old leather briefcase, retrieved from the dusty top shelf of her closet, sat open on the floor, gradually filling with notes and highlighted documents. Her laptop, usually used for inventory and ordering, now displayed legal databases she still had access to through subscriptions she'd maintained for research purposes. A knock at the back door interrupted her work. Donna stood there holding a large casserole dish. You need to eat, she announced, pushing past Lily into the office. She stopped short at the sight of the legal chaos. What's all this? Lily hesitated. Just trying to understand what I'm up against. Donna set down the food and picked up one of the legal texts. This doesn't look like light reading. My cousin sent some resources, Lily said, the lie tasting bitter. Donna studied her friend's face. You know, there's something different about you today. I can't quite put my finger on it. Lily turned away, busying herself with finding space for the casserole. Just stress, probably. Well, you're not alone in this fight, Donna said, pulling a folded paper from her pocket. Look at this. It was a flyer announcing a town meeting that evening. Support Lily Wright. Stand against injustice. The whole town's coming, Donna said proudly. Mayor Wilson says we need to show solidarity. Lily felt a mix of gratitude and alarm. That's very kind, but I don't want anyone getting in trouble on my account. Trouble found you, not the other way around, Donna replied firmly. We'll see you at 7 Town Hall. She headed for the door, then turned back. And Lily, whatever you're planning with all these books, I hope it works. That man needs to be put in his place. After Donna left, Lily returned to her research with renewed purpose. The accusations in Hammond's summons were vague, but she could read between the lines. He was focusing on 3 tax years when her business showed minimal profit. By design, as she'd reinvested everything into building her inventory and renovating the space. There was nothing illegal about running a business that barely broke even. But she knew how prosecutors could twist facts to create implications of wrongdoing. She pulled up her meticulously maintained spreadsheets and began printing key documents. Unlike most small business owners who might panic at an audit, Lily had prepared for this possibility from day one. Every expense was categorized, every receipt saved, every decision documented with the precision of someone who knew exactly what auditors would look for. By late afternoon, Lily had assembled a comprehensive defense. She'd identified the relevant statutes Hammond might cite and prepared counterarguments for each. She'd compiled a timeline of her business activities that explained every financial decision. She'd even drafted a motion to dismiss that Patricia Dean could file on her behalf if needed, though she'd have to find a way to make it seem like Patricia's work, not hers. The only thing she hadn't decided was how much of her legal knowledge to reveal. At 6:30, Lily locked up her files and walked to the town hall. The evening air was cool, carrying the scent of upcoming rain. As she approached the building, she was stunned by the crowd. It seemed like the entire town had turned out, with people spilling onto the steps and lawn. Inside, the mayor stood at the podium, addressing the packed room. And we will not stand by while a newcomer threatens one of our most valued community members, he was saying, as Lily slipped in through the back door. Someone spotted her. There she is! Suddenly all eyes turned her way, followed by applause and cheers. Lily felt her face flush with embarrassment. Please, this isn't necessary, she said. But her words were drowned out by the crowd's enthusiasm. Mayor Wilson beckoned her to the front. Reluctantly, she made her way through the crowd, accepting pats on the back and words of encouragement. Lily, the mayor said, putting an arm around her shoulders, we want you to know that Millfield stands with you. This town takes care of its own, more applause. Lily looked out at the faces, the hardware store owner, the high school teachers, the retired couple who came in every Tuesday for new mysteries, the teenagers who studied at her tables after school, all here for her. I don't know what to say, she began, her voice catching. Except thank you. This means more than you know. From the back of the room, a cold voice cut through the warmth. How touching. The crowd parted as Judge Hammond walked down the center aisle, his expression a mix of amusement and disdain. A town meeting to support someone accused of tax fraud, he said, reaching the front. Quite unprecedented. Mayor Wilson stepped forward. This isn't about the accusations, Judge. It's about how you've conducted yourself since arriving. Targeting our businesses, making threats about town funding. Ensuring compliance with the law is hardly targeting, Hammond interrupted. And any conversations about county funding were merely observations about the appropriate relationship between county and town governments. He smiled thinly. I'm sure no reasonable person would interpret those as threats. His gaze shifted to Lily. Ms. Wright, I'm surprised to see you here instead of preparing for your hearing. The evidence against you is quite compelling. 5 years ago, Lily would have had a razor-sharp retort ready. Tonight, she measured her response carefully. I look forward to seeing this evidence, Judge Hammond. In detail. Something flickered in his eyes. surprise at her calm reply. "You'll see everything in court," he said. "Though I doubt you'll understand the legal complexities involved." A ripple of anger went through the crowd. Patricia Dean, who had been sitting in the front row, stood up. "Judge Hammond, as Ms. Wright's attorney, I must object to this inappropriate discussion of an upcoming case, especially your prejudicial statements about my client." Hammond raised an eyebrow. "Your client? I wasn't aware Ms. Wright had secured representation." Patricia looked at Lily, who gave her a slight nod. "She has," Patricia confirmed, straightening her shoulders. "Well," Hammond said, his smile not reaching his eyes, "how fortunate for her to have Millfield's only attorney on her side. Though I understand your practice focuses primarily on wills and real estate transactions, Ms. Dean, tax law can be quite specialized." The condescension in his voice made Lily's blood boil, but Patricia held her ground. "I'm fully capable of defending my client, Your Honor." "We shall see," Hammond said, turning to leave. At the door he paused. "The hearing is at 9 a.m. sharp. I do not tolerate tardiness in my courtroom." After he left, the energy in the room shifted from defiance to concern. "Don't worry," Patricia said to Lily as the crowd began to disperse. "I'll stop by your place early tomorrow to finalize our strategy." Lily nodded, not trusting herself to speak. She accepted more well wishes as people filed out, promising to attend the hearing in support. By the time she walked home, the rain had started, a gentle but persistent drizzle that matched her mood. The confidence she'd felt earlier while researching had dimmed. Hammond was clearly determined to make an example of her, and he had the power of his position behind him. Back in her apartment, Lily spread her research across the kitchen table and stared at it. She knew tax law inside and out. She could run circles around Hammond's legal arguments, but revealing that knowledge meant revealing her past, which could change everything about the life she'd built here. Her phone buzzed with a text from Patricia. "Working late on your defense. Any insights from your cousin?" Lily looked around her apartment at the life she'd created, the stacks of books she was reading for pleasure, not work. The half-finished painting she'd started in the local art class. Photos of hiking trips with friends who knew her only as Lily, the bookseller. She thought of Patricia, working late on a case type she wasn't familiar with, determined to help. Of the townspeople who had filled the hall tonight, ready to stand with her. Perhaps it was time to stop hiding. Lily picked up her phone and typed, "I have some ideas. Can you come over now? There's something I need to tell you." Then she walked to her closet and took out the navy suit once more. The county courthouse stood imposingly against the morning sky, its stone steps already crowded with Millfield residents despite the early hour. Lily climbed those steps in her navy suit, hair pulled back in a professional bun, carrying a leather briefcase that hadn't seen the light of day in 5 years. Beside her walked Patricia, visibly nervous but determined, clutching a folder of documents they had prepared together during a late-night session. Last night, after hours of deliberation, Lily had finally revealed her true background to Patricia. The older attorney had sat in stunned silence for nearly a full minute before bursting into laughter. "I knew there was something about you," Patricia had exclaimed. "No ordinary bookseller asks the questions you do when I mention my cases." They had stayed up until 2 in the morning, with Lily laying out a strategy that had Patricia shaking her head in admiration. "Hammond won't know what hit him," Patricia had said with glee. "But are you sure you're ready for everyone to know?" Now facing the courthouse doors, Lily wasn't sure at all. But it was too late to turn back. Inside, the courtroom was packed. It seemed everyone in Millfield had taken the morning off to attend. Donna waved from the front row where she sat with the mayor and other business owners. The high school principal nodded encouragingly. Even old Mr. Jenkins had put on a tie for the occasion. "All rise for the Honorable Judge Richard Hammond," called the bailiff. Hammond swept in, his black robe flowing behind him. He surveyed the crowded room with a frown before taking his seat. "I see Ms. Wright has rallied her supporters," he remarked dryly. "I remind everyone that this is a court of law, not a town meeting." Patricia and Lily sat at the defense table. Across the aisle, a young man Lily didn't recognize arranged papers at the prosecution table. "Assistant County Prosecutor Greg Taylor," Patricia whispered, noting Lily's questioning look. "Fresh out of law school. Hammond probably picked him because he's easy to." control the proceedings, began with Hammond outlining the case against Lily. The court will show that Ms. Wright has engaged in a pattern of suspicious business practices, including underreporting income and claiming dubious business expenses, all designed to evade proper taxation. He nodded to the young prosecutor, who stood nervously. The county presents Exhibits A through F, Your Honor, demonstrating irregularities in Ms. Wright's bookstore finances over the past 3 years. As Taylor distributed the documents, Lily carefully reviewed each one. They were exactly what she'd expected: financial statements highlighting the minimal profit margins of her business, with certain expenses circled in red ink and accusatory notes in the margins. Ms. Dean, does your client wish to make an opening statement? Hammond asked, his tone suggesting he didn't expect much. Patricia rose. Yes, Your Honor, but if it pleases the court, Ms. Wright would like to speak on her own behalf, with me assisting as needed. Hammond looked surprised but nodded. Very well, though I advise against self-representation in complex financial matters. Lily stood, feeling the eyes of the entire town upon her. For a moment she was transported back to her first major case at Caldwell and Brennan. The same butterflies in her stomach, the same determined fire in her heart. Thank you, Your Honor, she began, her voice clear and steady. Before addressing the specific allegations, I'd like to request the court's clarification on which specific tax statutes I'm alleged to have violated. Hammond blinked, clearly not expecting this opening. The prosecution has provided documentation of the irregularities. With respect, Your Honor, irregularities are not the same as violations. I'm entitled to know which specific laws I'm accused of breaking. The young prosecutor shuffled through his papers. Primarily Section 66662 of the Internal Revenue Code, regarding underpayment of taxes. Lily nodded. Thank you, counsel. And are you alleging negligence or intentional disregard of rules and regulations under subsection B? The prosecutor looked to Hammond, confused. Hammond frowned. Mr. Taylor? I believe both, Your Honor, Taylor said, though he sounded uncertain. In that case, Lily continued smoothly, I'll direct the court's attention to Treasury Regulation 1.66623, which clearly defines the standards for determining negligence and intentional disregard. The prosecution's exhibits fail to establish either standard has been met. A murmur ran through the courtroom. Patricia suppressed a smile beside her. Hammond's expression shifted from confusion to suspicion. Ms. Wright, he said, leaning forward, you seem unusually familiar with tax law for a bookseller. I read widely. Your Honor, Lily replied with a small smile. Now, regarding Exhibit A, the prosecution has highlighted my business's low profit margin as suspicious. However, under Small Business Administration guidelines for new retail establishments, a 3-year growth period with minimal profits is not only common, but expected. She pulled a document from her briefcase. I've prepared a complete financial history of Turning Pages, with all income and expenses categorized according to IRS Publication 535. Business expenses. She handed copies to the court clerk, Hammond, and the prosecutor. The young prosecutor looked increasingly uncomfortable as he reviewed the document. Hammond studied it with narrowed eyes. Furthermore, Lily continued, the suspicious expenses highlighted in red include educational materials and community events, all of which qualify as legitimate business expenses under Section 162 of the Internal Revenue Code, as ordinary and necessary expenses paid or incurred in carrying on any trade or business. Ms. Wright? Hammond interrupted, his voice tinged with irritation. This court doesn't have time for an amateur legal presentation cobbled together from internet research. Lily paused, taking a deep breath. This was the moment. Step back into her old role and risk losing the life she'd built. Or continue the charade and risk losing her business, Your Honor, she said carefully. My presentation isn't based on amateur research. Before opening Turning Pages, I graduated summa cum laude from Harvard Law School and worked for 7 years at Caldwell and Brennan in New York, specializing in tax law and business litigation. The courtroom erupted in gasps and whispers. Donna's mouth fell open in shock. The mayor nearly dropped his glasses. Hammond's face froze in disbelief. Order, he demanded, banging his gavel. Ms. Wright, are you claiming to be a licensed attorney? I am an attorney, Your Honor, though I've been inactive since moving to Millfield. My bar membership in New York and Massachusetts remains in good standing. I chose not to practice here, but my legal knowledge didn't disappear when I opened a bookstore. The young prosecutor was frantically whispering to his assistant. Hammond's face had turned an interesting shade of red. Why would a Harvard-educated attorney abandon her career to run a small-town bookstore? Hammond asked, skepticism heavy in his voice. That's not relevant to these proceedings, Your Honor, Lily replied firmly. What is relevant is that these charges are without merit, and I can demonstrate that conclusively. She turned to her detailed financial records. If we look at the quarterly tax payments documented here, you'll see that not only have I fully complied with all tax obligations, but in fact, I've overpaid in certain quarters due to conservative estimates. For the next 20 minutes, Lily methodically dismantled each allegation, citing relevant tax code, treasury regulations, and case law precedents. The young prosecutor sank lower in his chair with each point. The courtroom audience watched in growing amazement as their quiet bookseller transformed before their eyes into a legal force to be reckoned with. Hammond repeatedly tried to interrupt, but Lily respectfully countered each objection with precise legal reasoning. When she reached a particularly complex point about business expense categorization, Hammond cut in. Ms. Wright, Sanderson v. Commissioner clearly contradicts your interpretation of, with respect, Your Honor. Lily interrupted gently. The Supreme Court partially overturned Sanderson 3 years ago in Blake Enterprises v. United States, limiting its application to cases involving manufacturing businesses, not retail establishments like my bookstore. Hammond's mouth opened, then closed. It was clear he wasn't familiar with the case she'd cited. The courtroom had fallen completely silent. In addition, Lily continued, pulling another document from her briefcase, I've prepared a motion to dismiss based on procedural irregularities in how this case was initiated. County statutes require a minimum 30-day notice before a tax audit can proceed to formal charges. Unless there's evidence of criminal intent, I received no such notice and the prosecution has presented no evidence of criminal intent. She handed the motion to the court clerk, who passed it to Hammond. His face darkened as he read. Your Honor, Lily said, her voice softer now. I understand the importance of tax compliance. As both an attorney and a business owner, I've made it my priority. These proceedings appear to have been initiated without proper cause or procedure. Hammond was silent for a long moment, the motion gripped tightly in his hand. The entire courtroom seemed to hold its breath. Finally, he cleared his throat. This court will take a 30-minute recess to review these documents. Ms. Wright, Mr. Taylor, in my chambers now. As Hammond stood to leave, Lily caught Patricia's eye. The older attorney gave her a thumbs up. From the audience, Donna mouthed the words, Harvard Law. With wide eyes, the mayor looked like he might applaud. Even old Mr. Jenkins wore an expression of grudging respect. Lily gathered her documents, feeling strangely light. The secret she'd guarded for 5 years was out, and somehow the world hadn't ended. Whatever happened in Hammond's chambers, she wouldn't go back to hiding who she really was. As she walked toward the judge's chambers, head held high, she heard someone in the audience whisper, I always knew there was something special about her. Judge Hammond's chambers felt smaller than Lily remembered courtroom chambers to be. Perhaps it was the tension filling the air, or the way Hammond himself seemed to have physically deflated since they'd left the courtroom. He sat behind his desk, Lily's motion to dismiss in front of him, fingers drumming rhythmically on the polished wood. The young prosecutor, Greg Taylor, stood awkwardly near the door, looking like he wanted to be anywhere else. Sit down, Ms. Wright, Hammond finally said, gesturing to a chair. Lily sat back straight, hands folded in her lap, the posture of a seasoned attorney, not a nervous defendant. Harvard Law, Hammond said more to himself than to her. Class of? 2013, Lily answered. Summa cum laude, Hammond nodded slowly. I was Yale, 98. He studied her face. Caldwell and Brennan is one of the top firms in the country. Senior associate on the partnership track, I'm guessing. Junior partner, actually. Youngest in the firm's history at the time. The prosecutor shifted uncomfortably by the door. Hammond glanced his way. Mr. Taylor, would you give us a moment? Once the door closed behind Taylor, Hammond leaned back in his chair. Why, he asked simply. Why walk away from all that? Lily hadn't expected this question. She'd prepared for anger, for accusations, for attempts to undermine her credentials, not curiosity. I had a case, she began, surprising herself with her willingness to share. A major corporation versus a family business. The kind of case that makes careers. I won. The family lost everything. That's the legal system. The stronger case prevails. The stronger lawyer prevails, Lily corrected. Their attorney was overwhelmed, inexperienced. I knew the tax code better, had more resources, more time to prepare. I didn't win because justice was on my side. I won because I was better at the game. Hammond's expression remained neutral, but something flickered in his eyes. Recognition, perhaps. The night after the verdict, Lily continued, I had a panic attack so severe I ended up in the emergency room. When the doctor asked what happened, all I could say was, I did everything right and it felt completely wrong. Silence filled the room. Outside they could hear the murmur of the waiting courtroom. So you ran away, Hammond finally said, but his tone lacked the judgment she expected. I didn't run. I chose a different path. One where I could help people understand things, not use my knowledge to destroy them. She met his gaze directly. Why did you become a judge, Your Honor? The question seemed to catch him off guard. To uphold the law. Is that what you were doing with me? With the other businesses in Millfield? Upholding the law? Hammond's jaw tightened. I was addressing laxity in a system that had clearly become too comfortable with non-compliance. Based on what evidence? My predecessor's record showed virtually no tax violations prosecuted in 3 years. That's statistically impossible unless enforcement was neglected. Lily allowed herself a small smile, or unless it's a community where people generally follow the rules. Not every absence of violation indicates absence of oversight. Sometimes it just means people are doing the right thing. Hammond didn't respond immediately. He picked up her motion to dismiss, flipping through the pages with a thoughtful expression. Your motion cites procedural violations that would be grounds for dismissal, he finally said, but it doesn't request sanctions against the court or prosecution. I'm not interested in escalation, Your Honor, just resolution. Hammond nodded slowly. The Blake Enterprises case you mentioned? I'm not familiar with it. It was decided 4 months ago. The opinion was only published in full last month. I've been preoccupied with my relocation, Hammond admitted. He studied her for a moment longer, then made a decision. Ms. Wright, I'm prepared to dismiss all charges, with prejudice on the grounds of insufficient evidence and procedural irregularities. Relief washed over Lily, but she maintained her professional composure. Thank you, Your Honor. However, he continued, I have a condition. Lily tensed. What condition? Millfield needs legal expertise. Not just for wills and real estate, but for business owners, for the town government, for people who can't afford to drive to the city for proper representation. He leaned forward. I want you to consider practicing law again. In some capacity. Of all the things she'd expected him to say, this wasn't on the list. I left that world for good reasons, she said carefully. And you've had 5 years to heal. 5 years to find balance. Hammond surprised her with a genuine smile. Besides, I could use someone who keeps up with Supreme Court decisions to discuss cases with. Before she could respond, a knock came at the door. The bailiff poked his head in. Judge, the gallery's getting restless. Some folks are saying they'll wait all day if they have to. Hammond nodded. We'll be right out. He stood, smoothing his robe. Shall we, Ms. Wright? When they re-entered the courtroom, a hush fell over the crowd. Patricia jumped to her feet, eyes questioning. Lily gave her a small, reassuring nod. Hammond took his place at the bench. Having reviewed the evidence and legal arguments presented, this court finds the charges against Ms. Lily Wright to be without merit. Furthermore, procedural irregularities in the initiation of these proceedings compel dismissal. All charges are hereby dismissed with prejudice. The courtroom erupted in cheers. Hammond banged his gavel for order, but he didn't seem particularly upset by the outburst. Additionally, he continued once the noise subsided, this court extends an apology to Ms. Wright for the inconvenience and unwarranted scrutiny. The record will reflect that her business practices have been found to be in full compliance with all relevant regulations. Lily felt a weight lift from her shoulders, not just the immediate threat of the charges, but the burden of her secret as well. As she turned to thank Patricia, she found herself enveloped in a fierce hug from the older attorney. Why didn't you tell me? Patricia whispered. All these years I've been boring you with my simple property disputes. They weren't boring at all, Lily assured her. They were real people's problems, not corporate games. As they gathered their papers, townspeople began to approach, faces full of questions. Donna pushed her way to the front. Harvard Law? Seriously? She demanded, hands on hips, but her eyes were twinkling. All this time I thought I was just feeding a bookworm and I was feeding a legal eagle. I'm still the same person, Lily said, suddenly worried about how this revelation would change her place in the community. Course you are, Donna said firmly. Just a bit more interesting than we thought. Over the next hour, as the courthouse slowly emptied, Lily found herself accepting congratulations, fielding questions about her past and repeatedly assuring people that no, she hadn't opened a bookstore as an elaborate cover for some secret legal investigation. Mayor Wilson cornered her by the water fountain. You know, the town has been contracting with a firm in the city for legal services. Costs us a fortune. Any chance you'd consider? One step at a time, Mayor, Lily said with a laugh. By late afternoon, Lily stood alone on the courthouse steps, the sun warm on her face. The past 24 hours had transformed her life in ways she was still processing. Her secret was out. Her business was safe. And somehow the world hadn't ended. A voice behind her broke into her thoughts. Miss Wright, she turned to find Judge Hammond, his robes replaced by a suit, briefcase in hand. Your Honor. Richard, please. We're not in court now. He seemed less imposing somehow, more human. I owe you a more complete apology. I came to Millfield with preconceptions. I assumed the lack of prosecutions meant corruption or incompetence. It's an easy assumption to make, Lily acknowledged. Big cities breed a certain cynicism. Yes, they do. He looked out at the town square where people were going about their day, many waving at Lily as they passed. This place is different. It is. I meant what I said in chambers, Hammond said. This town could use your legal skills. Not full-time, perhaps, but in some capacity. Lily considered this. For 5 years, she'd kept her legal expertise locked away, afraid of being pulled back into a world that had nearly broken her. But using that knowledge here on her own terms to help her neighbors and friends, that was something different. I'll think about it, she promised. 3 months later, a new sign hung in the window of Turning Pages bookstore. Free legal consultation, Tuesdays and Thursdays 2 to 5 p.m. The small desk in the corner of the shop, usually used for book signings, had become Millfield's unofficial legal aid center. Lily didn't take payment for these sessions. Instead, she asked people to donate books to the new children's reading room she was developing. She still ran her bookstore full-time, still lived her quiet life, but now without the weight of hiding who she really was. Judge Hammond, Richard, became a regular at the store, often stopping by on Thursday evenings to discuss interesting cases over coffee. His initial approach to the town had softened considerably, and he'd become known for his fair rulings and community involvement. On this particular evening, as they debated a recent appellate decision, Donna dropped by with her usual delivery of baked goods. Look at you two legal eagles, she teased, setting down a plate of cookies. Who would have thought that whole mess would turn out like this? Lily smiled, thinking of the unlikely sequence of events that had brought her here. From high-powered attorney to bookseller in hiding to something new, a person fully herself, using all her skills and knowledge in a way that felt right. Sometimes, she said, reaching for a cookie, justice works in unexpected ways.